Welcome to Midweek News, episode 90 for August 22nd, 2024. Let's get started. The fine folks over at rosehosting.com have provided a walkthrough tutorial of installing Nextcloud on Debian 12. While this is more involved than other Nextcloud installs, it also gives more detail for those who want to better understand how the different components work together. It's worth taking a look if you want to run Nextcloud at home. The Incus 6.4 Container and Virtual Machine Manager has been updated. Incus, you may remember, is the more open community version of LXD that has been absorbed back into Canonical. Version 6.4 continues to add new features and is now simplifying deploying OCI containers. A full changelog is linked in the article. Cosmic Desktop Alpha, a hands-on review. If you haven't used it yourself, the article gives you a good walkthrough of the current state of the Cosmic Desktop in its alpha release. While I have covered the alpha release in a live stream shortly after it came out, I will probably wait until the second alpha or the first beta to do a full install and walkthrough on the channel. We may revisit it in an upcoming live stream so we can track the progress. Heroic Games Launcher 2.15 is now available with expanded support for Good Old Games and EA Games. When I started doing Midweek News, gaming on Linux was still a pretty small niche. Now we are seeing incremental progress happening at an exciting rate. You've heard me say that I'm not much of a gamer, at least a PC gamer, but this gives me hope that between the gaming progress on Linux and the proliferation of mini PCs, it will become easier to become a casual gamer using Linux. Minetest 5.9.0 is out now. Minetest is a cross-platform game that is similar in many ways to Minecraft, but without the restrictions imposed by the official Minecraft after Mojang was taken over by Microsoft. Choice is good. Dust, a Rust implementation of the du command. Here we have yet another classic Unix/Linux utility re-implemented in Rust. The du command on a Linux or Unix system, including macOS, will show how much of your disk is currently being used. I can look forward to a day when we have a Linux system that has the option of having a full suite of system utilities re-implemented in the Rust language. The M4 Mac Mini will be faster and smaller. This year may mark not only the fastest ever Mac Mini, but the first redesign in over a decade. As a Mac Mini user, I can say I'm looking forward to seeing what will come of this machine and how it will once again transform the market for mini PCs. The 5 best free cloud storage providers. This article brings a pretty mainstream list of cloud storage providers. While they may be free as in beer, they certainly are not free as in freedom. Several of the options presented in the article are not friendly to anything outside of Windows and macOS. Anybody listening to or watching this news show should understand that there is no cloud, it's just somebody else's computer. That said, I would be interested in hearing what your favorite cloud storage solution is, and whether or not you would be interested in seeing a showdown testing various cloud storage solutions from a Linux-centric point of view. The first point release for Ubuntu 24.04 LTS has been delayed by 2 weeks. This is an important development because the first point release for a new LTS version is when in-place upgrades from the previous LTS version are enabled, meaning that those who are still using Ubuntu 22.04 LTS will have to wait just a little longer before starting to test and plan for upgrades. I'm happy to see that Canonical is taking a bit of a conservative approach to the release of this update, and it will hopefully aid in the continued stability of Ubuntu's server. Proton makes VPN browser extension free and introduces a new pricing plan. Recent improvements to Proton VPN adds more servers, Proton Wallet and refinements to Proton Pass. Previously available only to paid users, Proton has now opened up the browser extension for Firefox and Chrome to everyone. For a limited time, you can get the Proton Duo plan, which opens up 2 Proton accounts for just $14.99 per month with yearly billing, with all the same benefits as Proton Unlimited, but for 2 accounts. Proton is definitely worth a look if you have not done so before. Competition comes to SteamOS hardware as Valve confirms support for the ROG Ally. With the addition of support for ROG Ally, I can't help but wonder what this might mean for a future official Steam Deck version. A general release of SteamOS 3 will be available that can be installed on non-handheld PCs, but that's not quite ready yet. There is also planned support for dual boot support on the Steam Deck, allowing people to run Windows or SteamOS on the same handheld. Surprising nobody, the IRS still has loads of legacy IT and no plans for replacement. According to the article, an audit report identified 107 of its 334 legacy systems as up for retirement, yet only 2 of those 107 have specific decommissioning plans. For some listening to this, your grandchildren are likely to be hearing similar stories in 20 years if things don't start changing soon. This article and the linked report are an indictment of both of the political parties in the US, spanning multiple decades of failure. Fast Fetch, a NeoFetch replacement for Linux, macOS, and Windows. It has been widely reported that the much-loved NeoFetch has ceased development and the project has been archived. Fast Fetch is one of several contenders that have emerged. A modern fetch utility that is not only seeing rapid development, but is cross-platform, is a great find. While it is not 100% necessary to make a switch right now, starting to plan for a migration is probably a good thing. Thankfully, all modern operating systems now support the option for aliases, and you could just make an alias pointing at Fast Fetch, and your users may never know the difference. Available now through the web or through your favorite package manager, including Homebrew and Mac ports on macOS, and Scoop, Chocolatey, and Winget on Windows. A clear and concise guide to enabling SSH on Ubuntu systems. I was impressed with this walkthrough on the Unix Men site because it talks not only about how to enable SSH on an Ubuntu system, but it goes the extra mile to talk about configuration and the use of a firewall. If you're new to setting up SSH on an Ubuntu system, or have only done the automated setup during install, I would highly recommend taking a look through this tutorial. Haiku OS R1 Beta 5 is coming with new performance improvements. The BOS-inspired Haiku OS has been getting some great enhancements lately, including continued work on high DPI display support, various app fixes, improvements for the FreeBSD and OpenBSD compatibility layers, and an overhaul to the FAT file system driver. Release 1 Beta 5 will be out in a few weeks, with test candidates coming soon. It sounds like we can expect a September release if all goes well. For those not in the know, BOS was once a contender to being acquired by Apple before they chose to acquire Next and Steve Jobs instead. Jean-Louis Gasset, a former Apple executive, was a founder at B Inc. Microsoft removes FAT32 partition size limit in Windows 11. From the arbitrarily imposed limits file, Microsoft has reversed course and removed this limit for FAT32 partitions. Previously maxed at 32 gigabytes, in the latest Windows 11 Canary build, you can now create a FAT32 partition size up to 2 terabytes. This is an interesting development and one that will make it easier to share an external disk with Linux or macOS users, since they all understand FAT32. In case you missed it, I released a video on Tuesday talking about and demonstrating one of the Proxmox helper scripts. You will find this video linked in the description. Immich 1.112 brings material color theming to the mobile app, amongst other improvements. Some of those other improvements include new options in the mobile app, as mentioned. Web users will find locating geographical data easier. Photographers will like the Immich now incorporates star ratings into the metadata extraction process. Better stability for the iOS app, and advanced search models. We may take a look at Immich 1.112 in the next live stream. Tails 6.6 improves persistent storage and supports newer hardware. While Tails remains a niche OS for people who are extremely concerned about security, it is very much worth knowing about and can be great for those who travel and may be subject to random computer searches in hostile countries. Based on the latest Debian 12 bookworm release and powered by the long-term supported Linux 6.1 LTS kernel series, which will be supported until December 2026. A 2GB RAM variant of the Raspberry Pi 5 is now available for $50. Where the 8GB model is great if you want to run a full desktop on the single board computer, there are certainly use cases where the extra RAM is not as important, such as digital signage. Sure, this is more expensive than previous models of the Pi, which included a $35 variant, but there have been several factors which have contributed to the raising of the price from the rate that was introduced in 2012. We cannot realistically expect the price to stay the same after more than a decade and one pandemic later. And surprisingly, Apple launches a web version of its podcast platform. It's not often that Apple gets a mention on this program, and certainly less often that there's an announcement that will be palatable for all users, including those who don't use Apple products. Releasing a web version of podcasts is certainly an interesting development. Perhaps, as a result, I will take another look at making an audio-only version of Midweek News and getting it out to a wider audience. And that, my listeners, will bring us to the end of episode 90 of Midweek News. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.